My name is David Singleton. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Consule Solutions, and we welcome you today. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about turning NetSuite into a growth engine. Okay, and I'm here with Prabodh Kadam, who is the CEO and founder of Consule Solutions, as well as David Rosenberg, who's the Executive Director of Operations. So I'd like to give a special thank you to Mozaik for joining us today. And as a NetSuite Alliance Partner, I'd also like to give a great thank you to NetSuite for supporting us in this endeavor. We're going to be going through two stages. One is a little bit about learning who Consule is, and the next about Mozaik's experience with Consule. So as we go through this webinar, if you have any questions, please put that in the chat. At the end of the webinar, we'll be able to go through the questions and answer those for you. So at this point, I'd like to hand things off to Prabodh, CEO and founder, for him to introduce himself and introduce Consule Solutions to everybody who's joined today. So Prabodh, you have the floor. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Prabodh Kadam. I'm founder and CEO of Consule Solutions and Oracle NetSuite Alliance Partner. I spent last decade working deeply in NetSuite ecosystem, leading more than 100 full-cycle ERP implementations across industries such as manufacturing, distribution, entertainment, and services. Over those years, one thing has become very clear to me. ERP projects don't fail because of technology. NetSuite is an incredible, powerful platform. They fail because organizations underestimate the importance of operational alignment, making sure the system truly reflects how the business runs. That's the work we focus on every day at Consule, helping organizations turn NetSuite from a system of record into a system that actively drives the operational performance and growth. Move on to next screen. At Consule Solutions, our mission is straightforward: help businesses unlock the full value of NetSuite. Many organizations implement ERP successfully from a technical standpoint. They go live, the system works, the transaction flows. But the real transformation happens after that. It happens when companies begin to optimize processes, automate operations, and build better visibility across finance, supply chain, manufacturing, and customer operations. Our team works with companies through entire life cycle, from implementation to system design and customization to long-term operational optimization. And in 2024 and 2025, we were honored with NetSuite Alliance Spotlight Award, particularly for our work in entertainment, distribution, and manufacturing sector. What matters most to us is partnership. We work closely with leadership teams, ensure NetSuite isn't just supporting businesses, it's actively helping them scale. That philosophy has helped us build a strong reputation in NetSuite ecosystem and deliver meaningful outcomes for our clients. One thing we have learned over the years is that ERP success doesn't end at go live. In fact, that's usually where the real work begins. That's why we created what we call the CARE program, which stands for Customer Advisory, Resolution, and Enhancement. The idea behind the program is simple. NetSuite should continuously evolve with your business. Through the CARE program, we provide structured support that includes functional NetSuite support, best practice consultation, system configuration and improvements, upgrade guidance, and advanced reporting and analytics. Every customer gets a dedicated primary and secondary administrator, so there's always someone familiar with their environment. And we hold regular meetings to review priorities, discuss open tickets, and identify opportunities to improve the system further. This approach ensures that NetSuite keeps delivering value month after month and not just during the implementation. One of the biggest things that we have done through our support program is include industry standard project management tool called Jira. So Jira not only helps us and our team to maintain the project and the deliverables on time, but also helps our customers to keep track of the tasks that are open and see the tasks that have been completed and provide any comments or feedback on any of the tasks. So that's one of the best things that we have received as a feedback from our customers. who like our support program and like what we provide through Jira. Thank you. Go to next screen. As we work with more and more operationally complex businesses, especially in process manufacturing, we started seeing same challenges appear again and again. Things like batch production, yield management, formula management with BOM structure, production scheduling, and catch weight inventory scenario. And that's where we build what we call as Console Pro Shop. So Console Pro Shop helps companies manage their production end-to-end, starting with Batch Wizard. So Batch Wizard allows you to batch your production with multiple demands in a single production line, which will allow you to combine all different demands and not require you to maintain multiple work orders for different demands at the same time. Factory Sync will allow you to schedule your production on time, not only with a whiteboard Kanban view, but with a calendar view to see how many jobs have been assigned on a single day, with a Gantt view where you can track what stage of your production you're currently in, but also with a capacity planner where you can manage the capacity of your shop floor and then give dedicated response to your customers on when you can deliver the product. Catch IQ will allow you to track the weight of your product, so you always maintain the true value and cost of your inventory, whether that's in purchasing, whether that's in shipping, or in production. Our Catch IQ solution will make sure that your product shows the true value and you see your correct gross profit based on whatever you have purchased, sold, versus built. Co-yield will allow you to track multiple co-products and byproducts, which is basically multiple outputs in a single production. So this is for companies who can have multiple co-products for such as chemical companies, chemical industry, or lumber industry, who can have a byproduct as they go through a single production line. FlexBomb will allow companies to maintain multiple formulas, either that's a dedicated formula for a single batch, or a formula for a specific customer, or a list of multiple different formulas for different recipes. And finally, YieldCraft is designed to give you the actual yield of your production. This is where you can track how much you have actually consumed and what was the actual yield from the consumption of your inventory. All these tools are designed specifically to extend NetSuite capabilities in the areas of manufacturing. These aren't just theoretical tools. They are built from real operational environment and designed to address very practical business challenges. Our goal with these solutions is to help companies move faster, scale more effectively without reinventing the wheel every time. And finally, it is important to recognize that modern ERP environments doesn't exist in isolation. Today's businesses operate with an ecosystem of platforms for tax automation, payments, logistics, integration, warehouse management, and more. Over the years, we have built strong partnership with leading companies across NetSuite ecosystem, including Avalara, Celigo, Tipalti, RSmart, Paystand, ShipHawk, and others. This partners allows us to design solutions that are not just for ERP implementations, but fully connected operational platforms. Because ultimately, the goal is not simply to deploy software. The goal is to build an infrastructure that supports sustainable, scalable growth. And we deeply thank all these partners who help day to day on making sure we provide the ultimate value of NetSuite to our customers. And with that, I will transition to David Singleton, who will conduct an interview of David Rosenberg from Mozaik, who will share their experience and journey with NetSuite. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Prabodh. Well done. We really appreciate all that information. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce David Rosenberg, Executive Director of Operations at Mozaik. David, if you would please introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. My name is David Rosenberg. I'm the Executive Director of Operations here at Mozaik. A little bit about myself. The first 20 years or so of my career were in IT. My degree is in computer science. During that time, I performed multiple ERP and financial system implementations of multiple different systems, going back to the DOS days in the late 90s, to software as a service systems now. Although the last 10 to 15 years, I've really switched from more of a technical focus to an operational executive management focus. But having that technical background has really helped with NetSuite and some of our ERP stuff. I think the one big thing that I've learned in my career is that businesses run best when you're making decisions, data-driven decisions, as opposed to emotional or gut-based feelings. So it's one of the real reasons I love NetSuite, is because it provides really, really strong, easy access to seeing our data.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit more about Mozaik and the type of work Mozaik does?
Sure. We've been around we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary a couple of months ago. So we're a packaging distribution company. We focus pretty much primarily on custom packaging solutions. And what that means is we're working with our customers and our manufacturing partners to design and then manufacture and even store and deliver custom packaging solutions. So that's everything from retail packaging. You go to Target or Home Depot and see products on the shelves. We're manufacturing and supplying a lot of that. Frozen food. If you shop at Costco, I always get a kick out of walking down the aisles in Costco and looking at all the different food brands that are boxes that we're supplying. We do corrugated, so shipping stuff back and forth, master cartons, everything customized. And then a real growing part of our business is kind of on the high security / anti-counterfeiting packaging side. So that would be packaging for things like pharmaceuticals, OEM automotive replacement parts, high-end collectibles, that sort of thing. And that films, foils, holograms, security labels, that sort of thing. That's kind of our primary focus.
Thank you. So can you tell us about your ERP evaluation process and why you chose NetSuite?
Sure. So I started here almost, I guess, 4 years ago now, 3.5, 4 years ago now. And for about the year prior to me joining, the Mozaik staff had been researching ERP systems. They knew that their current QuickBooks solution, wasn't keeping up with the growth of the company, but they were kind of stuck in analysis paralysis. They had talked to a bunch of different vendors, but weren't really leaning toward one or the other and just didn't know what to do. So one of the first projects I worked on when I started here was narrowing down that ERP solution search. And as I said, I've implemented a bunch of different ERP systems in the past, and have kept relatively abreast of the products that are out there. So what I had done was looked at everything that they had that they had researched so far, and I narrowed it down to Dynamics Nav, SAP Business One, Acumatica, and of course NetSuite. So I met with all those vendors, did a bunch of due diligence, and then we eventually narrowed down to a product called Acumatica and NetSuite. I actually went to a Acumatica user group conference to learn about their solution, and I just, to be frank, heard some horror stories about implementation and projects taking a year and a half to implement for similar sized companies. And that kind of turned me off to that solution. But the thing that I really, really liked about NetSuite actually was the size of the user community. There's so many NetSuite user forums and user groups and there's just so much documentation available on the NetSuite side that really helped push our decision that way. And obviously, we chose NetSuite. We've been live now for a little over 3 years, and we've been very happy with that decision.
Thank you. So at what point did you realize that you needed a partner like Console Solutions to help you finish the implementation and optimize NetSuite moving forward?
Yeah, so based upon my prior experience, I know you have to have a business partner when you're implementing an ERP solution, and we did. That was not Console. Unfortunately, I think we had like a 5-month implementation period, and we were about halfway through that, and I wasn't happy. They had a very kind of checklist-oriented implementation process. And I didn't really feel I was getting the business analysis role with those guys. So I was posting a lot on the user community, the different NetSuite user groups and forums, and someone from Console reached out to me, and it kind of started as helping me with some technical question or some business analysis question, and then eventually I'm like, hey, can you guys just take over? And so we kind of describe it as Console rescued our implementation. And Prabodh mentioned this, and I couldn't agree more. Implementing is 20% of your journey. Once you've implemented the solution, that's where the real work starts in making that solution work for your processes and or updating your processes to work with that solution. So to this day, 3 years later, I'm still meeting with Console. We actually meet twice a month, and they help us with regular day-to-day support type stuff or any customizations or advanced reports that we need.
When you first went live with NetSuite, as many customers who start with NetSuite do, what were the biggest challenges you experienced?
So my biggest challenges weren't NetSuite or technical specifically. I mentioned that we'd been on QuickBooks, so the company was 17 years old at this point. We'd been on QuickBooks and then an inventory management system called Activate. And we have a lot of long-term employees here at Mozaik, and they had been using QuickBooks and Activate, in some cases, their entire careers. But definitely at Mozaik, it's the only thing they had ever used. So change is always going to be hard, and we experienced a little bit of that. Additionally, in QuickBooks, our prior solution, there were so many different limitations on what we could do that we had modified our processes to kind of work within that system and lost some efficiency when doing that. But those processes had become so entrenched in our staff that it became difficult to look at it from a blank sheet sort of perspective. So we spent quite a bit of time post go live deconstructing those processes to make them more efficient and align better with how NetSuite works out of the box.
Thank you. And how did those challenges impact your manufacturing, sales, and operations teams?
Well, I told the team, and again, this is just from experience, I told the team that for the first 3 to 6 months after we implement, that they'd probably all hate me. And, that was unfortunately a little bit true. They were so entrenched in their system that doing stuff a different way, was hard. However, I also told them that within a year, they'd be saying, how in the world did we do business before we got NetSuite? And that's true. It didn't even take a year. 6 to 12 months in, we had optimized a bunch of our processes so much that everyone really saw the benefit. But those first couple months, I remember we'd run into something that we'd never done before, something relatively rare, a vendor RMA or something like that. And we'd all huddle around, not all of us, but a bunch of us would huddle around one computer and kind of try to figure out the best way to do that. And, that was challenging, but as we did that, we would iterate on our process And at this point, I feel it's pretty mature and we're doing things pretty well. And the best example I think of process improvement was with our monthly close. We used to have a person whose sole job was basically monthly close. They worked on the monthly close throughout the whole month. It took us 20 business days to close. Now we can do that in just a couple of days. But
Very nice.
the biggest challenge was just kind of overcoming that this is the way we've always done it mentality.
So when you started engaging with Console, how did Console help you assess your NetSuite environment specifically for Mozaik?
So like I said, it kind of started with just technical support. And as I got to know Console and it moved from technical support to business analysis, that's when we really started to see the value. So unfortunately, Console got involved late in our implementation process. So, we had to act very, very fast. But for the first month or two, I really spent a lot of time kind of on the business analysis side, talking about, hey, this is how we do things. How do we do this in NetSuite? What's the best method to do it? So we spent a lot of time just learning the business, which was great. And we really worked together as a team to make that implementation successful when it had been off the rails for quite a while. We brought Console in, started doing that business analysis, and were quickly able to pivot to a successful implementation.
Thank you. What were the key gaps or issues they identified that you hadn't realized before?
Well, everyone at the company at the time was new to NetSuite, so we didn't really know what we didn't know. NetSuite has their own way of doing things, and sometimes, as with any major ERP solution, there's limitations that the system has. And working with a partner, really helps you figure that stuff out and learn how to do things. I think one of the biggest issues that we've had historically, like a lot of companies, we did a lot of business through spreadsheets, which I wasn't a big fan of. And working with the Console team, I wanted to get rid of that. One of the big things we do for our customers is what we call vendor managed inventory. So, gives the customer, if the customer needs to purchase 1 million of a certain SKU over a year, we'll give them the purchasing power to do that. We'll buy 1 million of that item, or we'll manufacture 1 million of that item that they need. Customer will give us a blanket purchase order. And then we release it to them, we store it, and we release it to them on an as-needed basis, on a just-in-time kind of basis for them. So we used to track that via spreadsheets and other old-fashioned tools, but I worked with the business analysts at Console to create what we now call blanket sales orders. There's a notion of blanket purchase orders in NetSuite, but we use the quote and estimate system in NetSuite to create blanket sales orders, which Console did with us or for us. And that solution allowed us to provide that to our customers and track it much more efficiently. So the customers could get the pricing of buying in very large quantity with the benefit of only having to pay when they actually took delivery, and then also not having to worry about storing a year's worth of inventory in their warehouses. So I think the biggest change gap that we had was around that blanket sales orders, and the solution that Console came up for us really solved that.
Thank you. So how do you continue to work, and how did you work on priorities that needed to be fixed first? And you mentioned that we meet with you twice a month. You have the Jira. So how does that process feel, and how does that work?
Yeah, well, I kind of think that if you've been in IT in your career, you're always IT. So even though I don't play an IT role anymore, I'm still very technically involved. And the Jira stuff, like I absolutely loved that when we were talking about the different things that we wanted to get done, I could initially I would communicate that to console and they would create the Jira tickets and I would have access to it. But it got so seamless that I ended up just going into Jira and creating stuff on my own. And then I could see the developer work and the developer testing, and we'd bounce stuff back and forth within Jira, screenshots, that sort of thing. So I really felt like the developers were part of my team. And as priorities changed, I could literally just go into Jira and shuffle stuff around. Like I said, it felt like the console developers and business analysts were part of my team. It was very, very seamless. So that was great.
Thank you. Can you walk us through some of the key workflow improvements that you've seen after you moved to NetSuite for warehousing, distribution, and the kitting that you do?
Sure, sure. So obviously our monthly close is significantly faster. The accounting team loves that. We talked about the blanket sales order process, which our customers love, and the vendor managed inventory. The visibility we have into that is just significantly better than it used to be. We don't technically manufacture, but we do a lot of kitting and assemblies where we take products from multiple vendors to create a final package. And previously, we have assembly and fulfillment and kitting teams. Some of them are internal employees. Some of them are external subcontractors. And it kind of used to be a black box in our old system. So, we'd have a project, we'd get all the raw materials, we'd ship it off, and then our visibility was gone. And likewise, the people that were doing the kitting didn't really have a lot of visibility, didn't have any visibility into the old system to see what was coming down the line, what the production needs would be, that sort of thing. So that was one of those examples where I sat with console and said, hey, we've got this visibility problem. What do you recommend? And what they did was they created some suitelets that we could publish an execution dashboard or a production monitoring screen for even these subcontractors of ours who don't use NetSuite. Now they've got TVs just like you'd see at any other manufacturing facility that are showing our production order. This is the items that we need kitted. This is when it's due. This is how many you've done so far. This is how many are left to do. And we can shuffle those and prioritize those. So it gave both our internal assembly teams and our external subcontractors or vendors visibility to see what was happening. But more importantly, it gave us the ability to see what they were working on, how much they had done, estimated completion dates, that sort of thing. So it gave us much more visibility to seeing what we had going on. And, as I've said multiple times, visibility of your data is really one of the most important things you need as a business.
Thank you. What were the biggest wins you noticed immediately after implementation?
NetSuite is obviously a SaaS solution, so it's very, very easily deployable, and that's relatively commonplace nowadays. But for us, we had a fat client. We had a client that you had to install, and then we have a lot of remote sales folks, and they would have to VPN in and connect and to look at the data. All that went away. So now bringing on new users and or showing data to our sales rep, it was just so much easier. If you have a phone, a web browser, an iPad, or whatever, it just made things much easier to deploy and view the data. I think that NetSuite Global Search, it sounds silly, but the ability to put in a customer PO number and then see the customer PO, our sales order, our purchase orders to our vendors, and all that Like a lot of my users don't really know how to navigate within NetSuite because they don't ever do it. They just type in the sales number they're looking or type in the customer. They don't go, file, order, whatever. They just use the global search. So it makes it very, very easy to pull together different record types when you want to see the entire flow of an order or a transaction. Um, the other big win is what NetSuite calls saved search. So, back in our old system, and I'm sure a lot of folks have experienced this, you wanted to do a new report, you basically had to go to your VAR, your IT folks or whatever, or somebody who knew Crystal reports, and new reports were programming. In NetSuite, they do have that kind of advanced reporting, but 80% of the reporting you need can be done in saved searches, which is, it gives the end users the ability to create searches or reports based upon the data that they have access to. So it really empowered my end users to look at data in the way they need to look at data. Obviously, we have our standard safe searches that everyone uses, but I always get a kick out of when I go to someone's desk and they, turn around their screen and show me, and it's a search that we didn't create and they created on their own, which just wasn't possible with our old systems. But again, it all comes down to being able to find and analyze data, and that was the stuff that we were able to see right away when we moved to NetSuite.
So how do these changes impact your team's day to day? You had mentioned that, they'd see it within a year and hopefully forget it. How did that look to them after that happened and you were able to have NetSuite implemented and optimized by Console?
So I mentioned the remote sales reps. The way that, because it was so onerous to connect to our systems in the past, they didn't. So a lot of our sales reps, what we would do is we had canned reports that we would send out every evening or every morning that the sales reps would get, and that was kind of how they would run their book of business. The cool thing with NetSuite is we still do have those reports. We recreated those, so they still get those emails, but they can click on those emails and bring up the data real time through a web browser without having a VPN or any of that crazy stuff. They can bring it up and they can see that data and drill down to it. So it really gave our sales team real-time access to the data. There was a bit of a learning curve there, not a super sharp one or super hard one, but now if they want to, they can drill down and see real-time data rather than having to wait until 5:30 p.m. when they get their reports or that sort of thing. The other thing that has been a benefit in the old system, we used to have these manual order statuses. So like, orders awaiting inventory or orders awaiting billing. And what we would literally do is there was a drop down in the system and you'd say, okay, well, this order, I'm going to put it in the orders awaiting inventory bucket. Or this one, I'm going to put in the orders awaiting billing bucket. And then it was someone's job to go through each bucket every day and process those. And if someone accidentally chose the wrong thing in the dropdown, orders could get lost or fall through the cracks. Well, with NetSuite and Save Search and that sort of stuff, you don't need any of that anymore because since everything is together, you can create Save Searches that automatically categorize those orders based upon the data associated with them. So this helped reduce what I call problem orders, which are those orders that kind of fall through the cracks, and it's made things much more accurate.
Thank you. Were there any surprises or lessons you learned during the whole process?
Definitely. So as with any, I think I mentioned this earlier, with any big software solution, there's going to be oddities or limitations. The advantage of a VAR who really knows the system and knows business really well is that they know those issues and they can help you work around those issues without it feeling like a workaround. like one of the things that would frustrate me early on is I would be creating a saved search, and for some reason there's some fields that NetSuite doesn't populate in saved searches, or you can't access in saved searches. But I would just call my console folks and say, hey, I need to see this data in my saved search. And they would know, oh, you can't access it that way, but you can access it this way. Um, so, I use the term workaround, but it's not a workaround in the sense of having to do extra work. It's workaround in the sense of you have to access that data a little bit differently. And had I not had a knowledgeable VAR, that would have been very difficult. But now if I ever, and that's why we've maintained the relationship for, post go live for 3 years, because we still run into those sorts of things. And rather than banging my head against the wall, I know that helps a phone call away, um, and I can get an answer relatively quickly.
Good to hear. Thank you. What measurable outcomes did you see after Consule's optimization work post go live?
So a lot of it's intangible, obviously, that's a lot of the stuff we've talked about, ease of implementation, the ability for end users to create their own safe searches, that sort of thing. I think most measurably is probably the month end or the accounting period closing process, that has been simplified. Back in the old days with QuickBooks and inventory management, we had to do a lot of manual reconciliation at the end of the month that just doesn't exist in NetSuite. I mean, it just works. So the period end close has been a big part of it. And then also, the other things we talked about, the kitting and assembly, being able to see all the different open assemblies we have and what the status is. It's really improved our ability to manage those projects, and assign, okay, well, this group's going to work on this group's going to work on that, this group's going to work on something else. It's all about visibility of data, and that's improved quite a bit.
How has NetSuite become a growth enabler for Mozaik rather than a bottleneck like you experienced before?
Well, it's definitely, I think I mentioned this, it's easier to add new employees. That used to be a much more complicated process. I think one of the really cool things about NetSuite, as an IT person, I had worked on ERP solutions that required, significant customization. And one of the challenges you have when you're customizing a big software product like NetSuite is that it at least in other ERP solutions, those customizations could dramatically impair your ability to upgrade. In fact, in one environment I worked, we had a solution that was so customized that the version of the software we were using was 10 years out of date. So there was all sorts of bug fixes and new features and stuff that we weren't able to take advantage of because our customizations basically made the solution unupgradable. The really cool thing about NetSuite is, I'll mention two things. One is that, we use the word customization, but a lot of the customization in NetSuite isn't really customization, it's more personalization, where you can, without developer help, move stuff around, rename things as necessary, create workflows to automate processes. So you're doing the customization within the confines of the system. You're not modifying the system. You're doing these customizations within the confines of the system. And that could be done by non-programmers. So that's really cool, because if you need something, you don't always have to go to your VAR to do it. Some of that stuff you can do on your own. But if you do have more complex customizations, they don't impact your upgradability. So NetSuite has 2 mandatory upgrades every year, and your system just gets upgraded. They send you emails and they give you access to a sandbox environment or a preview environment so that you can test all your stuff. But it just works, which is really, really cool. So when NetSuite has announced new features, whether it's AI or bug fixes or enhancements, we always get the benefit of having those. Whereas in the past, I didn't really get that benefit because our solutions were so customized.
Sense. So what would you say to other companies struggling to get NetSuite working efficiently in their own environments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's organizations out there who say, oh, we could do it without a VAR. That's not a good idea. You definitely want to have a good VAR, and you want to have a VAR that's more than just the technical. Okay, well now you can create a transaction and you can go from a prospect to a quote to a customer with a sales order to a fulfillment. Like yeah, you could get that far with probably any VAR, but finding a VAR that really prioritizes the business analyst role is super important. Um, Another thing is the NetSuite community. There's a ton of NetSuite user groups and forums. There's a Reddit or subreddit for NetSuite. Um, Utilize that. Ask your questions. I used to be a little bit shy to post stuff because I felt dumb, but the user community is so supportive, and to this day, I almost every day I'm on the user community. Now I'm sometimes answering questions, which is really cool. But the other thing is just Google. It surprises me how sometimes people are afraid to just Google stuff. But I mentioned like I'll go to a coworker's desk and see they've created a new saved search, and I'm like, well, how did you learn to do that? And they're like, well, I just Googled how to create a saved search to view XYZ. And now with ChatGPT and Claude and some of those types of LLMs, it's really really easy to create reports and views and workflows just by using those tools.
Yeah, gives everybody the personalization they want.
Yeah, it really does. It lowers the bar for the personalization that used to require development and IT. And if you're in a public company and you've got to go through significant change management and stuff, with Safe Search and stuff, it's so easy to just do that on your own now.
So how has the ongoing partnership with Console helped your operations evolve over time?
It comes down to learning the things you don't know. As your business changes and you have new service offerings or new products, you're going to want to utilize new features, and or your business may change and processes may change. So having someone to help with the both analysis and implementation technical side has been very very helpful. Working with Console, there's some times where I'll want a change or customization and I'll be very specific. Like I want to create a workflow that does every time an order gets into this status, it does this, and I can map it out and flow chart it. Um, and I'm just assigning that to a developer. But the real value comes when I have a business problem that I just don't know how to solve. And I don't know, does NetSuite have an inherent ability to do this? Do I have to create is there a way to customize it? Or is this best done in another solution or maybe a third party app or connector? And that's where the real value with Console is, because they have so much knowledge and have worked with so many different types of clients. There's a lot of the times where I'll say, hey, I need something to do this. And they'll say, oh yeah, we did that for a customer 2 years ago. We can do something similar for you. So that's the real value is, or I'll have this has happened multiple times too. I'll come up with a solution. I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, whoa, 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 don't do that. Do this instead. And I'm a little embarrassed because I thought my idea was a really good idea, but then I'll realize, well, their solution is a much more elegant solution than what I'm proposing. So that's been really valuable.
Thank you. If you could give one piece of advice to companies struggling with NetSuite, what would that be?
Well, I'd have a couple pieces of advice. we talked about finding a good VAR. That's obviously important. Then there's kind of two phrases that I've heard throughout my career that are nails on a chalkboard for me. That is, we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way is never a good reason to continue doing things that way. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to change it, but you should look at it, because what we've seen is, when you always do things a certain way and you're so entrenched in that way of thinking, challenge yourself and challenge your users to whiteboard it and, blank sheet of paper and look at that process and say, in a perfect world, how would we do it? So you should do that with your NetSuite implementation. Don't recreate what you have in your existing system, because you're upgrading from your existing system for a reason. So why would you recreate the same processes? And then, the other thing that chaps my hide is these just in case workarounds where, something happens 1 out of every 1,000 orders or whatever. So you completely change your processes for this just in case scenario. Well, what happens over time is you have all these just in case processes that you've built up, that the 2-minute process to enter an order, as an example, is now a 10-minute process to enter that order. And that's ridiculous. Use the system, use the tools, whether it's detective controls that you build into the system or data restrictions that you put into the system to identify those kind of oddball scenarios and deal with them without having to change your whole process. So, it's really about being open to changing your processes. And then from a business standpoint, making data-driven decisions. It's frustrating, sometimes in my past life, I'll see instances where I'll give you a specific example. Previous job I had, we had a service offering that wasn't very popular, and management was upset that this service offering wasn't very popular. So they decided to cut the price in half and do a special on it. Well, we dug into the data, and unfortunately, it was pretty complicated at that point to look at this data. And we found that every time we performed that service, we lost money. So we made this emotional decision to put a special on this service because we didn't think it was getting enough business or volume, and that just hurt us. So when you're implementing NetSuite, think about the tools you need to make those business decisions so that you can see that data, so you're not making emotional. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to go with my gut. And there's a time and place for that, but your gut should be driven by data, not by emotion.
Thank you so much. And and the last question, how should companies think about continuous improvement after the NetSuite go live?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a big continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma, that sort of thing. So, and Prabodh said it too. The implementation is 20% of your journey. You're always going to want to be creating new reporting, new safe searches, and improving efficiency. Organizations change over time. You add staff, you remove staff. You want your system to be flexible enough to change with your company and your processes. And if you look at your system as this unchangeable, monolithic black box, you're not being flexible as your business changes. So I do think it's very important to maintain your relationship with your VAR post implementation, and have those. We do it right now twice a month, and I'm kind of getting to the point now where maybe we only need to do it once a month, because in more than half those cases, the meetings are, no, we don't really have anything to talk about. But just having those meetings on the calendar forces me to think about, hey, how could I get more value out of NetSuite today than I did last week? So and talking about the issues and the problems that the business challenges we're facing during those meetings has very much contributed to changes that have made the process better and more efficient.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to open it up to questions. We haven't seen any questions in the chat. We're here to answer for you. We thank you all for attending today. We really do appreciate it. Some of you came in a little later than we started, so you might not have heard that if you had any questions you'd like to ask, you can put that in the chat. So we'll give it a minute for anybody to ask any questions. Okay, well, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. I'd like to thank Mozaik. I'd like to thank NetSuite, and a special thanks to Prabodh as well for putting this together so we can get better understanding of how Console and Mozaik has worked together on Mozaik's journey with NetSuite. I hope everybody has a great day. And if anything comes up after this, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help. Thank you.
Can I make one quick comment, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that NetSuite community thing. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. If you guys, anyone has any questions or wants to talk more from a customer experience, by all means, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.